Welcome to this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast. I'm your host, Ril Gerald Quinn, episode 825 of the Real Deal Podcast, as we sadly, sadly review the last episode of the season for television's best show, Snowfall. This episode, of course, was titled Fault Lines, season 5, episode 10, Fault Lines. Let's get into this quick synopsis before we get into best scenes, themes, and best scenes. Franklin loses all his money. Avi gets killed. Louis and Jerome continue to honeymoon and celebrate. Teddy Mack makes a donation, and Gustavo runs into an old foe. That is just a mini quick synopsis of what transpired. Of course, we're going to get into the best scenes and deep dive one Teddy Mack. Themes of this episode: desperation and Franklin versus everyone. When you lose $73 million, that will cause you to become a desperate individual, as we saw with one Franklin Saint. Let's get right into the best scenes. Teddy and Franklin. So Franklin has just found out that he's lost $73 million on the conversation with his banks and all of his, that's it. He lost everything. So he basically is freaking out as at his office with Veronique and at the real estate at their real estate office. So he immediately comes to the conclusion that it was Teddy Mack, and he was absolutely 1,000% right about that. He finally, after a while, he finally gets Teddy Mack to return one of his many pages. Teddy Mack basically says, "Hey, for somebody who no longer works for me, why'd you basically page me like 11 times?" And Franklin tries to play it cool at first. He says, "Hey, I made a mistake. I want to do business again. I was upset, felt betrayed." And calmly, Teddy Mack says, the deal is, it's over. If you want to buy your bricks, if you want to stay in business, you got to go through Louis at this point. And then Franklin loses it and says, "Hey, man, just give me my money. I know you took my money. I know that just put it back and we'll be good." And Teddy, of course, basically says the same thing he said at the beginning of the season when they were talking about Franklin's father. Is, I don't know what you're talking about. I have no idea what happened. He was less in this particular scene. He was, like, at least with Teddy, at least with the father situation, he said, "I promise you." Basically, I promise I had nothing to do with it, or I had no idea what happened. There was some type of compassion. There was nothing here. Like Teddy basically is like, "What are you talking about? Your money? I told you." Like, and we knew Teddy Mack took the money, and Franklin knew Teddy Mack took the money. But Teddy said, "Hey, I told you, you were too high profile with the real estate, and I warned you about that, and so on and so on." So then Franklin gets desperate, makes these threats which have no weight to him because he's in no position of power at this point. He has like nothing going for him from that standpoint to challenge Teddy. So Teddy basically said, "Hey, be careful. Be careful what you say next. You think you lost everything? Just wait." And then that basically was the end of that conversation. Franklin then goes to Louis. He calls up Louis, says, "Hey, you're the only one I can, you're the only one that can help me." Louis is in marital bliss at this point. Her and Jerome, of course, stayed some extra nights, booked some extra nights at their honeymoon, which, by the way, is for some drug king and queen fans. They, had a extended long honeymoon, and that doesn't bode well for them in the future. Like in terms of taking care of business. So they are still on he calls her while she's still in bed and says, "Hey, we need to meet. We need to meet. I desperately need your help." She responds at first like, "This is not a good time," but then gives in to Franklin and chooses to meet him. So they meet. And he tells, you know, she's by at this point knows what happened because he had told Sissy had told Jerome, and she said basically, "Hey, we frozen all our accounts, but there's nothing I really can do for you at this point because what do you want me to do?" And Franklin says, "Hey, he's not taking my pages anymore, but he's going to take yours. You know, you can page him, and then I'll take it from there, basically." And Franklin's grand plan was to kidnap Teddy Mack and basically torture him until he gave up his money, which would have been a horrible plan. Like that wasn't going to work. Even Veronique said, we that's just not the move. But like I said at the beginning of the podcast, Franklin at this point is desperate. I mean, he is losing his mind. Everything for the better part of 5 seasons is gone. I mean everything in terms of all his money. He turns out that he wasn't even broke; that he was ended up being in debt. Even the properties that are left over that he does own don't have a lot of value because of the particular locations with all the crime in South Central. So they are depreciating assets. And he basically, Franklin was living above his means. Like he was living above his means. So let me get back to Louis. I'll digress a little bit. So getting back to what happened with him and Louis. Louis refuses to help him. She refuses to give. She's not going to mess up her relationship with Teddy Mack for Franklin at this point. And he then again, similar to the conversation with Teddy, where it starts out cool and humble, and he starts out humble and cool and grateful. He immediately turns into desperation, blames her for this whole entire thing with her making a move with Teddy with the going behind his back with the plug going straight to the plug. He pulls out a gun and says, she says, "Hey, you're gonna shoot me," and he says, "I will. In order to get my money, I will kill you basically 10 times over." Luckily for Louis doesn't go anywhere without security, as she told Teddy Mack a couple episodes ago. Um, she has her guy Buckley, which again, Buckley, her guy pulls up behind Franklin with a gun. Buckley then says, "Hey, you want me, take care of this?" And she gives Franklin some mercy based off just out of respect for Jerome, but gives him a straight threat. Gives him some, basically says, "Hey, next time I see you again, when me and you are done, if I see you again, it's a wrap. I'm just going to flat out kill you." Franklin at this point is besides himself. Um, he at this point he has nowhere to turn at this point. Almost nowhere to turn, and we'll see what he does next. Then we go to Avi and Ruben. So Avi, of course, was kidnapped by Ruben, and Ruben, of course, we know it works for the KGB. He uses Avi to get files, um, from his house, from Avi's house, and basically Avi just sells everybody down the river. I mean, he sells out Franklin, sells out Teddy Mack, he sells everybody. Avi at this point is desperate, but Avi for the first time in this whole series is in a position where he just has zero power. He has no negotiating power. He is at the mercy of one Ruben. Ruben ends up killing Avi once he's gotten all the information. We knew this was coming. We knew that he was not going to let Avi walk out of there, even if he gave him the information, because Avi is a loose end. And he told this guy after he killed Avi that I just didn't trust him. And Ruben's a smart guy. Ruben's a cunning. You can't. I mean, Ruben absolutely had to kill Avi. Like, you can't leave a guy like Avi alive, and that come back on you. So once he kidnapped him, it was a wrap. Like, it was just a matter of time. Sad to see the character go. The actor who played Avi was tremendous. At that character, he lasted lasted 5 to 6 seasons. Colorful character, personality. was basically stole a lot of his scenes. Was one of those guys that was a like scene stealer. So kind of he kind of remind me of the actor from Lobos from Power. That Lobos was, of course, that one was, the not a kingpin, was even above the kingpin, was the distributor in the seasons 1 through 3 of Power. And I forgot the actor who played him, but kind of similar in terms of just the personality, crazy as hell. And but it was Avi's time. I mean, it was Avi, I didn't. They could have brought him back for next season, but there are going to be a lot of things going on next season. I could see why they took him out, and they also had to show that Ruben was about business. That Ruben is not messing around. Ruben's not messing around. So Ruben. So we go to speaking of Ruben, we go to Ruben. So Ruben shoots Avi, kills him, and tells his guys to clean it up. We go to Teddy, Ruben, and Parissa. So Teddy goes to get files from Avi's house because Avi's warehouse has been burnt down by Ruben. And Teddy, again, Avi has stuff on Teddy that concerned about that, that stuff on Teddy. So Teddy takes Parissa, similar to just like he did when he broke into Franklin's house and took all those pictures of his financial records. Tells her to stay off of all walkie-talkie, but what Teddy doesn't know is Ruben was there before him. Ruben not only gets away with all the files, he kidnaps Parissa, whose walkie-talkie went off as as Teddy, as Ruben was walking past the car. So Ruben, again, this guy is not to be played with. KGB. Remember at the beginning of the season, in essence, he wants Teddy dead. To be honest with him, he's in, he's working with Sissy on getting information, and it was part of that whole situation in terms of helping Sissy take out Teddy Mack. They never saw each other in the house. Avi had this big palatial house. They were going up as Teddy's going up the stairs. Ruben's going down the steps of the opposite stairwell. That was a very well shot. That was a excellent, a well shot scene. Um, great, great job by the camera work in terms of how that scene was shot. They never saw each other. And about time Teddy got outside, it was too late. Ruben had kidnapped Parissa, so he had some leverage and some stuff that he can hold over Teddy's head to even to negotiate or even have, like I said, has leverage over Teddy from that standpoint. We'll see how that plays out, of course, next season. So we get back to Franklin, Black Diamond in Dallas. At this point, Franklin has been shut out by everybody. He basically has no money, has in essence no friends outside of Veronique, who can't do anything at this point. We'll talk about Veronique later on in the podcast. So Franklin turns to Old Faithful, Black Diamond, and of course, and I also forgot to mention, Franklin was also turned down by Gustavo, who we find out was bugged by Teddy. Gustavo's kids or his nephews break a lamp in the house, and the lamp had a bug in it, of course, electronic bug in it. And Gustavo's girlfriend finds it, calls him, and at that point, Gustavo is in, is in not chase mode, but is get out of town mode. Tells her like we're gonna get out of here. I have $10 million. Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. Tells Franklin, hey, Franklin says, give me a location on Teddy. And Gustavo, smart, and this was absolutely a smart move by Gustavo. Gustavo says, no, like he'll think I'm a rat, and government, he's basically said the government is undefeated. You can't beat the CIA, you can't beat the government, you can't beat them. So, wish you best of luck, and that was it. And then again, Franklin, said, I saved your life earlier this season, earlier on, and Gustavo said, I saved your life as well, and he did. Gustavo earlier in the series saved Franklin's life. So, Franklin repaid that favor. But listen, Gustavo had to turn down Franklin. He could not give up Teddy for Franklin. Now, so and we'll talk about Gustavo a little bit later on. So Franklin meets up with Black Diamond in Dallas, tells him, "Hey, if you have any reservations about what's about to go down, say it now." They have some bags. He puts some bags in the trunk, and one of the best music sequences that you'll ever see. In the Air Tonight, Phil Collins, classic song we know, record back in the 80s. You've seen it on a number of movies, and you saw it on, of course, famously Miami Vice back in the day, as they were, one of the best shows ever in terms of soundtracks. That would put on artists who were superstars in the 80s. Um, they're as they're playing, in the air tonight. Franklin starts robbing Louis and Jerome's spots in terms of their money and cocaine. They first go to the club. Black Diamond and Dallas shoot the two guards, and then Franklin walks by. As the guard walks by, one of the guards is already laying down, puts a bullet in his head, and then takes as much money as he possibly could fit in all those bags, um, with Black Diamond in Dallas, and he tells them this is not even half of it, in terms of the money, in terms of the money that he lost. And then they rob another warehouse where Franklin shoots a couple of their guards as well, um, and takes that money. So Franklin at this point is at this the point of no return. From that standpoint, Franklin and Louis are basically officially at war. Well, really, Franklin, Jerome, and Louis are at war because Jerome and Louis are together. So you have the family completely fractured from that standpoint. And then the episode ends with Franklin and Sissy. Sissy, tells Frank mentions about the shootings and the robberies from Jerome and Louis, and she immediately, puts together that was indeed Franklin that did that to Jerome, that robbed Jerome and Louis and Jerome. Franklin says, I tried to fix it, and I tried to walk away. I tried to be the better man, and it got me nowhere. So this is where we're at. He offers Sissy an out in terms of, hey, I understand if you don't want no part of what's about to go down. I get it. You're not to blame for who I am right now. Um, and but Sissy, of course, uh, unbeknownst to Franklin, has her own connections with Ruben and the KGB. She says, "Hey, I can. I know you want to kill Teddy. I know you want to kill Teddy Mack. We can work together." And they are for the first time in the entire series, you see mother and son in complete cahoots, in terms of not so much the drug game, but in terms of just basically going to war. Like it's gonna be Franklin and Franklin versus everybody, and Sissy's gonna be right there as one of his allies, right there with him. As she has her, and by the way, she has her own agenda as well. Like she wants to avenge Alton's death, in terms of Teddy Mack, and now Franklin has, if Franklin wasn't thinking, I, I think, I want to be honest. I don't think Franklin, and this is just who he is. I don't think Franklin touches Teddy Mack if he doesn't take that money. Like even I think he had gotten over the fact that Teddy Mack killed his father. Like I don't think I'm just gonna be perfectly honest with you. I think taking his money was obviously just the point of no return. Not only takes his money, but basically forces him back into the game. Um, so we had that as best scenes. Also, at the end of that montage, um, You had Franklin going to the hospital to visit Kane, and he lets Kane know that Louis was the one that had him shot. So Franklin, that was the last piece, the last just, you know, F you basically to Louis and Jerome. Remember, even though Jerome, like they are, there's no separation with Louis in terms of Louis and Jerome. It's just not like, just we know Louis is calling the shots. Jerome is riding right along with her. So again, the family has been completely fractured, to say the least, when it comes, with the Saints and with Franklin, his mother, uh, and Louis and Jerome. So we're gonna deep dive the Teddy Mack versus Franklin, and really all season long, Teddy Mack has played the long game in terms of this. I think Teddy Mack had planned this all season long. To be honest with you, earlier in the series, well, not last season, I should say, he told Franklin anybody can be replaced. Now, this was following the death of his brother, who he was basically responsible for. If you remember, he got him hooked up on cocaine, not intentionally, but he gets involved. His brother was flying a plane for him as a pilot. He gets involved in Teddy's shit, and next thing you know, he gets kidnapped and again, they force him, take some cocaine and messes up his heart, and next thing you know, he has a heart attack last season, off screen, of course. So after that, and if you remember, the father did not allow Teddy to come to the funeral. So Teddy was drunk, and he called Franklin, and he met up with Franklin drunk as a skunk, and basically said, "Hey, anybody can be replaced." So fast forward to this season. Over the course of the season, he's saying, he's telling people, um, Gustavo, whoever cared to listen, hey, Franklin's getting sloppy. You saw him kill the the you saw him kill one of the assets so that he can work with Franklin again at the beginning of the season, the beginning of this season, because of how sloppy of how sloppy that guy was. And he thought the same for Franklin. Like, he thought Franklin was getting sloppy. During that conversation with when they're on the phone earlier in the episode, he when Franklin is trying to tell him that, hey, this is bad business. If you join up with Louis, she's not ready. She says, hey, what she's gonna have, I'm gonna get shot at, or father is gonna go talk to the press. So all this had been an accumulation of things that Franklin had done, even going back to last season with his father, that it got to a point to where enough was enough. And Teddy, I you know I think Louis coming to Teddy was just like what was a dream for him. I think he, at this point, as disappointed as he was in that last scene. Let's go back to the last scene in episode 9, right? When Franklin quits. So great acting by Carter Hudson. Carter Teddy Mack was not upset per se of the fact that he was going to have to work with Louis versus working with Franklin. It was more about his ego in terms of, hey, I tell you when it's over. You don't walk away from me. I walk away from you. It's almost like a breakup. Somebody, people's pride get in their way, and they'll say, "Hey, I broke it with them. They didn't break it with me." So that hit at Teddy took the money. Teddy took the money from that standpoint in terms of, his ego was hurt when Franklin walked away. I also think that Teddy is a conniving, deceiving motherfucker, and he saw when he realized Franklin had all that money. The worst thing Franklin could have said at that conversation when he's leaving is, "I got my money." that to me sparked the idea in Teddy saying, "Oh, really? You got your money? Okay." So we'll see about that. And then you see, he has all these pictures of the financial records earlier that he had taken earlier in the episode, and we know Teddy. So Teddy takes his money to kind of teach Franklin a lesson. And number two, $73 million, he uses that money to fund the war, and to fund the war that's never going to end. Like, you remember, he tells Avi in the last episode, yeah, we always gonna be working together because this is nonstop. So he takes that money, takes the money from Franklin, makes a donation to the CIA in terms of their cause in the wars overseas and or around the world that's going on. So to please his ex supervisor, so he's in good with him. Um, and I think again, I really think Teddy was playing Franklin this whole time in terms of as a, in terms of, hey, if he does this, I'll do this. If he does that, like, it was a game of chess, and Franklin got destroyed. Like, let's be honest with you, Frank. And again, he's supposed to get destroyed because Franklin, as smart as Franklin is, Teddy is the government, and I think the overriding message in this episode, and we talked, me and Rob sat, shout out to him, talked about this during when we were doing The Wire and looking back about systems versus individuals. And systems will always beat out individuals in society. It's just like the government is the government, period. So, and you heard it, Goose, I will tell Teddy Mack, I'll tell Teddy Mack, tell Franklin, yeah, no, you can't beat him. As slick as you think you are, he's slicker. As powerful as you've become, he's more powerful. And I think, again, Franklin made the mistake thinking that they were basically on equal footing. No, 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 no. 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 You still are under him from that standpoint. Maybe, you got your real estate, you may have been a kingpin, but he, in essence, put you in business from a standpoint of in terms of the drugs, and gave you these connections that allowed you to accumulate this wealth. And again, to Teddy Mack's credit, he told Franklin about the real estate. He warned him about that blinding him. And Franklin's head was not in the game. Frank, again, I said this last week, a couple weeks ago, like, he was starting to go into that Stringer Bell territory. Man without a country. And he learned the hard way. Because think about this, Teddy Mack is all about the wars and all about his job. Teddy Mack is one of those psycho guys who works 365. That's all he does. That's all he does. Versus Franklin, who was in and out the game, who was trying to become this real estate baron. And it wasn't going to work out. It wasn't going to happen. There's no in between with the drug business and stuff like that. You're either in or you're out or you're dead. And Franklin learned that the hard way. And really, you think about it, Franklin took a lot of L's this season. He took L's from Teddy Mack. He took L's from Louis, and he allowed Louis to take over his business. So from that standpoint, going around, behind his back, he took a lot of L's this season. He lost the respect of Leon. So I think, they spent this season really tearing down Franklin's character to kind of build it back up for season 6. But the bottom line is about Teddy Mack is kind of like, biting it, don't bite the hand that feeds you. And Teddy Mack and Franklin learned that the hard way. But I really believe that Teddy was planning this severance like months ago, and there were just these signs that these things that kept happening. Even going back to season 3, when season 3, when Franklin gets shot, he gets introduced. He starts working with Louis and Jerome, and things are going well when he was working with them. And in his head, he's probably like, "Oh yeah, this guy, he's definitely replaceable. Definitely replaceable. I can find another drug kingpin to move my drugs. No, they make those like those guys. Those are falling off trees. Kingpins. Someone gets knocked off, and another one steps up in their place. So Franklin got it in his mind over the course of the season that he was irreplaceable. And the bottom line is the overall message is there's no walking away. There's no you're not out. You're never out. Um, in terms of that, that's why we'll see what happens with Leon. Um, we'll see what happens with Leon. Leon, of course, yeah. Speaking of Leon, let me save the Leon stuff for season 6 previews. So MVP of not only the episode, but I gotta say MVP of the season is Teddy Mack. Like he played the long game, takes all Franklin's money, gets Gustavo locked up from the DEA as he tipped off the DEA on Gustavo leaving. And Gustavo, tried to take his money, not Teddy Mack's money, but try to take his $10 million that he earned, and he tips him off, fearing that Gustavo might go to Franklin, or maybe fearing that Gustavo might turn on him. So Teddy Mack was ahead of, not only Franklin was ahead of Gustavo from that standpoint. Um, he's got Louis and Jerome who he can control. They are not um as they are not as focused or determined as Prime Franklin before all this real estate stuff, and before he kind of you know got a fiance and had a baby, and was gonna have a baby, or soon to have soon to be father. Um, so Teddy Mack's the MVP of this not only episode, he's MVP of the season from that standpoint. He basically got everything he wanted. Now he's got some issues that he does not that he knows about with Ruben for next season. In terms of that situation, we'll see how that plays out. And he has a target that on his back that he does not know about in terms of Sissy. So we're gonna see how that plays out over the course of next season. Over the course next season. In regards to speaking of next season, so there will be a season 6, a final season. Obviously, they have put Franklin squarely back in the game. Franklin in a position where he is fighting for everything, in a position where he has enemies. He has Jerome and Louis as an enemy, Teddy Mack as an enemy. He has the DEA as an enemy. The DEA as an enemy. And his back is against the wall. Couple of back is against the wall. So we're gonna see Franklin and Sissy and how that season 4 plot line will come to full circle. Listen, for all we know, Alden might still be alive. We never definitively saw Alden's body. So maybe Alden, I would not be surprised if Alden came back. More than likely, I think he's dead. More than likely, I think he's dead, but I would not be surprised if he came back into the mix next season. I think it's gonna be very interesting to see what they do with a couple of characters who have been regulars from the start, in particular Leon and Gustavo. So Leon got it, basically gave up his reign over the projects to Big Dion. He tries to talk those guys out of the game, tries to help, by breaking down some new laws that are going to be passed during the midterms of 1980. I think the year was 86. of 1986 as far as yeah, it was 86 because Reagan came in and Reagan's second term was 84 to 88. So he tells them, hey, they're gonna start passing laws where if you get caught with a gram of crack, it'll be like you'll get charged like if it were like 100 grams. And one of the other guys said, yeah, you're gonna be locking up more black men, more black people. So he tells them to give it up, tells them they should, give it up, invest in some real estate, do some other things with the money they've accumulated. Most of the guys, the majority of guys say, we're not walking away from the game. Big Dion says, hey, I guess I'm in charge. I guess that puts me in charge. And then we see Leon at a celebration in the projects, and he sees that Big Dion is starting to get the attention as far as being a new leader of the projects. We see him with him and Wanda. Wanda has her passport. So will they, will they be able to walk away? Well, I'll believe when I see it. I mean, it'll be very interesting to see what they do with his particular character, because he's clearly out the drug business right now. Now, again, certainly there'll be some fear of something might happen to Wanda that'll pull him back in, or Franklin needs some help. Uh, I I can't see the whole Leon and Wanda go live happily ever after. I don't see that. I just don't see that happening. As far as Gustavo, I think so. Gustavo gets busted not by the DEA and by Tony Moreno, who was uh, the supervisor of the agent the undercover agent that Gustavo shot back in season, was it two or I want to say three, season three. Yeah, he shot her in season three. Um, and I think this is probably gonna bring back Lucille. I think this storyline is gonna bring Lucille back into the mix. Gustavo is not a rat. He's not gonna sell. I don't see Gustavo selling anybody out. So, and maybe it'll be interesting to see what they do with his storyline moving forward. But the bottom line is we're gonna have it's gonna be an all out war, because you got Franklin versus Louis and Jerome, Franklin and Sissy versus Louis and Jerome. You're gonna have Kane on Louis's ass. And then somewhere, Scully will be in the mix, and those some other characters that we don't even know about. Oh, Veronique. Veronique makes a call. She makes a call to her mother, who we know is a con artist and also a murderer. So we're gonna see Veronique's mother next season. Like that's going to happen for sure. We'll of course see Ruben next season. So most of the characters, the majority of the characters will be back for next season. The only killing, and it's not Avi wasn't even a major character. He was a semi-major character, but he was a recurring. He wasn't a serious regular. He was a recurring. He was a recurring actor on this show. So all the starring characters make it to a season 6. That's going to wrap it up for this latest edition of the Ril Dil podcast. I enjoyed looking at these episodes and reviews for Snowfall. Sorry, unfortunately, it's only 10 episodes. Wish it was 12 to 13, like Boardwalk Empire, like The Wire used to be. But it is what it is. We will look forward to a season 6. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and check out this podcast. Will be up later on this evening, early Friday morning. So long.